new channel. And to kick this off, I'm going to talk about my recent move to Dallas, Texas. So, my family and I recently moved to Dallas, Texas in June 2022 from Buffalo, New York. So, I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. I never lived anywhere else until we moved to Dallas, Texas, across the country. And this has been a huge move and a huge new learning experience for me. So, why did we move to Dallas, Texas from Buffalo, New York? My husband and I were both working in Buffalo, New York, but were looking for better employment opportunities. And my husband was applying to different positions within his industry and applied for a position that was initially listed as a remote position. When he had the first interview, they did tell him that it was no longer remote and that the position would be based out of Dallas, Texas. So he had the first interview, it went well, and they wanted to set up a second interview, which he agreed to. And then he spoke to me about what happened during the first interview and that the position was now going to be based in Dallas, Texas. So, as a married unit, we decided that he should still pursue the opportunity and we would just kind of see what happens. It wasn't a huge deal. Again, we were both, currently employed, and we just kind of wanted to see where things would go with this position. So he had several more interviews. I think he had like 3 or 4 interviews in all. They really liked him and they did offer him the position, which was very exciting. So, since we were in a position where we kind of had the upper hand, they wanted him, and we didn't necessarily need to make a move. We made certain requests, and his employer was able to meet those requests, and we went for it. We decided to move to Dallas, Texas. Okay, so now that you understand how we got here, let's talk about how we really got here, right? So, my husband and I have 7 children between the two of us. We're a blended family. And our children's ages range from 23 to 9. So this move was not just about us. We had to consider our children. We had to consider our family, our parents, our siblings, people that we felt obligations to at home in Buffalo, but mostly our children, right? So as I said, our children range in ages from 23 to 9. So some of them are adults, right? And they will make their own decisions, whereas others are minors. They are children, and we basically have to make those decisions on their behalf. And that was probably the most difficult part about the decision and about deciding to move, is how it was going to affect our children. My husband and I, we are adults. We will bear the consequence of our decisions, but it is oftentimes, as a parent, difficult to make decisions on behalf of your children, because the consequences are sometimes theirs, for a decision that they did not make. So my husband and I talked about the job, about the offerings, and decided that he should take it. And this took over a week for us to decide on this. We prayed about it, we talked about it, pros and cons, and really decided that it was a good opportunity for him. So he accepted the job, and within a week, we had to tell our families because my husband had to start his job within 3 weeks of him accepting the position. So our oldest child was already, living on his own, in his own apartment. So we told him, but our decision didn't impact him directly as much. And then we have two children who are around the same age. One was in college, and he would continue, his education, and on breaks would, go home to Buffalo and stay with his mother. The other child was uh, living in the home with my husband, and myself, but he also decided that he did not want to relocate. And he is an adult. That was his decision, and he has remained in Buffalo and is working to build his own life on his own. um there's three children who are in high school, and going into the move, they were finishing their ninth and 11th grade school years, right? So if you think about it, we were taking children who would start school in a new state where they don't know anyone, their sophomore and senior years of high school. So the decision was the hardest for my two upcoming seniors, right? The child who was going into the 10th grade really didn't have a choice. That he's my biological son, and he's coming with me. So he didn't have a choice. He was moving to Texas, and we let him know that he didn't really have a choice. Like, you coming. So I don't know how he felt about that. He didn't complain. There was never any complaint, but a few times he's been asked, like, how he felt about moving, and he has said, I didn't have a choice. So maybe he just accepted it. Maybe this will come up in like therapy at some point. I don't know. But he was 15 years old at the time of the move, and he didn't have a choice. So the two that were going into their senior year, my 16 and 17-year-old, we did give them a choice. Starting at a new school where no one, and going into your senior year, I imagine that is very difficult. High school kids are very cliquey, and I was concerned about really the social aspect for them. So we did give those two an option to remain in Buffalo with their grandparents and finish out their senior year at the school that they were going to at that time. And we did give them time to think about that. We let them know that we didn't need a decision for about 2.5 weeks. Even my older son, who decided to stay, we let him know also we didn't need a decision for about 2.5 weeks. And we gave them that time frame because at that point, my husband and I were going to go down to Dallas and start looking for apartments and so on. And we had done some research, obviously, leading up to that, and we knew what housing and apartments we were interested in. But how many kids we were bringing was going to determine how many bedrooms we needed. So we wanted to have an idea of who was coming with us when we went to actually secure housing. So that's why we gave them that time frame. And they were okay with that. And the two upcoming seniors actually decided to move. So my son, who was 16 at the time, he has a late birthday, so he was going to be a senior in turning 17 at the beginning of his senior year. Anyway, he actually made his decision rather quickly and said that he was not leaving his brother and he would not let his little brother, go to Texas by himself. So that was cool and that was sweet. So he knew from the very beginning that he was going to go to Texas. My daughter, who was 17, needed some time to think about it. And she thought about it, and I believe she talked to a counselor at school and talked to us, her parents, asked some questions and so on. And after a few days, she had also decided to go, which I wasn't surprised by, because these three, right, the 15, 16, and 17-year-old, are kind of like three peas in a pod. They're joined at the hip, right? So I knew that if the boys were going, that my daughter was probably going to go as well. And she did. She did, again, take some time to make her decision. And even after she made her decision, we told her that, if you change your mind, that's okay. We still have time. You still have time to make a final decision. And she was like, nope, that's my final decision. I'm going. And she didn't turn back on that. So those three were moving to Texas. Our youngest is 9, and she stayed in Buffalo with her mom. So we told the kids, right? Kids all know. Kids have all made their decision. Now we have to tell our closest friends and family, right? Beginning with our parents. So my husband had a conversation with his mother. I was not present during that conversation, so I don't know how it went. But my husband, he was, born and raised in Buffalo, New York as well, but had previously relocated to Boston, Massachusetts for a period of time. So this was not something brand new for him, nor his mother. So again, I wasn't present for that conversation, but he told his mom, and she was not like super ecstatic about it, but understood that he was making the best decision that he felt, or the decision he felt was best for him at the time. I had to tell my parents, and this was difficult. It was a little more emotional than I expected it to be for them and for myself. So I am the middle child of 5, and my older brother and sister had moved away for periods of time and end up coming back to Buffalo to live. So at the time of my moving, my older siblings who had moved away were now back in Buffalo. My youngest brother currently lives in Australia, right? So I didn't think that this was going to be like too hard for my parents to accept, but they were not, I'm not gonna say they weren't happy, but they weren't like, it wasn't necessarily what they wanted to hear, that another child was moving away and taking their grandkids on top of it. So actually when we told them, it was on Mother's Day, because we happened to be over there. My siblings were over my parents' house as well, so I thought it was a good opportunity to tell everybody at the same time. So we broke the news on Mother's Day. that we were relocating to Dallas, Texas, and we were taking the three teenagers with us, and my dad was actually like, "No, y'all can go, leave the kids here." So that was my dad's reaction, and my mom just kept saying, "You're making me so sad, Daddy, you're making me so sad." So they were not like super happy. And then when we actually moved, myself and the boys, we left on Father's Day. So these two, like, sentimental holidays, we break this news and then leave on those holidays. My daughter ended up coming about a week later. She flew to Texas because she had to stay back. She had one more exam that she had to take. The boys had already finished their exams by that point in June. And so we shipped our stuff, grabbed the boys and the dog, and drove 21 hours to Dallas, Texas. And again, my daughter flew a few days afterwards, and here we are.
Feels like the first time. Throw away all my